Hello, my name is Elias Thorne, I'm 28, I work as a carpenter, mostly doing custom cabinets and furniture restoration in my small workshop downtown. But right now, none of that matters because Lydia Vasquez just slid closer to me on her living room couch. Close enough that I can smell her perfume. Something warm and floral that makes my chest tight. She's looking at me with those dark eyes that have seen more of the world than mine ever will, and she just asked me the question that's been hanging between us for weeks. Do you want me to move away? Her voice is soft, almost a whisper, but there's something underneath it. Uncertainty, maybe, or hope. I can't tell which scares me more. She's 43, 15 years older than me. And sitting here in the lamplight of her tastefully decorated living room, she looks like everything I never knew I wanted, and everything I'm terrified I can't handle. I should probably tell you how we got here. It started 3 months ago on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other Tuesday morning. I was loading my truck outside Baxter's Hardware when I heard someone calling my name. Not Elias but Mr. Thorne? Which made me turn around because nobody calls me that unless they're trying to be polite about asking me to fix something. She was standing next to a silver Honda Civic with the hood up, wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that looked expensive. Her hair was pulled back in a way that showed off her neck. And when she smiled at me, I felt something shift in my chest that I wasn't prepared for. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, walking over with keys jingling in her hand. "But Mr. Baxter said you might be able to help me. My car won't start, and I have no idea what's wrong with it." I'd seen her around town before, usually at the coffee shop on Main Street or walking into the library with an armload of books. I knew she was new, maybe 6 months in Willow Creek, but I'd never actually talked to her. Up close, she was even prettier than I'd noticed from a distance. Not pretty in the way the girls my age were pretty. All sharp edges and trying too hard. She had this settled kind of beauty, like she'd grown into herself and was comfortable there. "Let me take a look," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans even though they were already clean. Her car smelled like coffee and something else. Maybe vanilla. The engine was cold. And when I turned the key, nothing happened. Not even a click. "When's the last time you had the battery checked?" I asked. She laughed, and it was a real laugh. Not embarrassed or fake. "I have no idea. I'm terrible with cars. I usually just drive them until they stop working and then panic." I popped the hood and checked the battery terminals. They were corroded, green and white buildup covering the connections like moss on a rock. "Found your problem," I said. "Battery terminals are corroded. It's an easy fix." "How easy?" "Give me 10 minutes and some baking soda from the hardware store." She insisted on buying the baking soda and a Coke for each of us while I cleaned the terminals. We stood there in the parking lot, drinking Cokes and watching me work. And she asked me questions about carpentry that made it clear she was actually listening to my answers. "I've always wanted to learn how to work with wood," she said. "There's something appealing about making something beautiful with your hands." "What do you do?" I asked. "I'm a librarian." Well, I was a librarian. Now I'm between jobs and trying to figure out what comes next. She didn't offer more information, and I didn't push. But there was something in the way she said it that made me think there was more to the story. When I finished with her car, it started right up. She tried to pay me, but I waved her off. "Buy me a coffee sometime," I said, and then immediately felt stupid for saying it, but she smiled. "I'd like that." 2 days later she showed up at my workshop. I was sanding a dining room table, working with the grain to bring out the natural pattern in the oak, when I heard someone knock on the door. I looked up, and there she was, holding 2 cups from Willow Creek coffee and wearing a blue dress that made her eyes look almost black. "I brought coffee," she said. "I hope that's okay. My workshop isn't much to look at. It's a converted garage behind my house, filled with sawdust and half-finished projects and tools that have seen better days." But she walked around like she was touring a museum, asking questions about the wood I used and the techniques for different joints. "This is beautiful," she said, running her fingers along the edge of a bookshelf I've been working on. "The wood is so smooth." "Cherry," I said. "It's for a client who wants something to match her grandmother's dining room set." You can match wood that old if you know what to look for. Wood has personality. Each tree grows differently, responds to weather and soil in its own way. You learn to read it. She looked at me when I said that, really looked at me. Like I'd said something more interesting than I meant to. We drank our coffee sitting on sources, talking about wood and books and the way small towns work. She told me she'd moved to Willow Creek from Chicago after her divorce, looking for somewhere quiet to figure out what she wanted to do with the rest of her life. "I spent 20 years being someone's wife," she said. Good at dinner parties and remembering anniversaries and keeping the house exactly the way he liked it. Now I'm trying to remember who I was before all that. What do you remember? I used to read everything I could get my hands on. I wanted to travel, see places that didn't look like suburban Illinois. I thought about learning to paint or maybe taking up photography. She laughed, but it sounded sadder than her usual laugh. Stupid dreams, probably. Why stupid? I'm 43 years old, Elias. Most people have their dreams figured out by now. Maybe, I said. Or maybe some dreams are worth waiting for. She finished her coffee and stood to leave. But before she got to the door, she turned around. Would you mind if I came back sometime? I like watching you work. It's peaceful. Anytime, I said and meant it. She started coming by 2 or 3 times a week. Always bringing coffee or sometimes lunch from the deli downtown. She'd sit in the old armchair I kept in the corner and read while I worked. Occasionally looking up to ask questions about whatever project I had going. I learned that she read mystery novels and biographies of women who'd done interesting things with their lives. She'd been married to a lawyer who worked too much and treated her like an accessory to his successful life. She didn't have kids, which was something that had caused problems in her marriage, though she didn't elaborate on whether that was by choice or circumstance. He wanted children as a status symbol, she said one afternoon while I was routing grooves in a cabinet door. Little versions of himself to show off at the country club. I wanted children because I thought they'd make me feel less alone. Neither of those seemed like good enough reasons to bring people into the world. I stopped working and looked at her. She was staring out the window at my neighbor's garden, where tomatoes were just starting to ripen on the vine. Do you regret it? I asked. Not having children, no. But I regret spending so many years thinking I had to want what other people expected me to want. I was starting to understand that Lydia was the kind of person who thought about things deeply. Who didn't just accept the way things were supposed to be. It made me want to be more thoughtful myself, to consider my words before I spoke them. The first time I realized I was falling for her was a Thursday in late June. She'd brought sandwiches for lunch, and we were sitting outside in the shade of the oak tree behind my workshop. She was telling me about a book she'd read about women who traveled alone in the 1920s, and her face lit up in a way that made my chest feel tight. Can you imagine? She said. Getting on a ship by yourself and sailing to Morocco or India, not knowing anyone or speaking the language, just because you wanted to see what was there. Sounds terrifying, I said. Exactly. Terrifying and wonderful. She looked at me then, and something passed between us that felt like a door opening. Not a big dramatic moment, just a quiet recognition that we were becoming something more than friends. Elias, she said and then stopped. What? Nothing. I just like saying your name. That night. I lay in bed thinking about the way she looked at me, the way my name sounded in her voice. I thought about the 15 years between us and what people in town might say if they saw us together. I thought about whether I was mature enough for someone like her, someone who'd been married and divorced and knew things about the world that I was still learning. But mostly, I thought about how much I wanted to see her again. The next time she came by, I was working on a rocking chair, trying to get the curve of the runners just right. She watched me for a while, then asked if she could try. It's harder than it looks, I warned her. Most good things are. I showed her how to hold the plane, how to work with the grain instead of against it. She was a quick learner, focused and careful with her hands. When she managed to shave off a long, thin curl of wood, she held it up like a prize. I made this, she said grinning. You did. It's beautiful. Wood usually is when you treat it right. She looked at me when I said that, and I realized we weren't just talking about wood anymore. Elias, she said. And this time, she didn't stop. I need to tell you something. My stomach dropped. Here it comes. I thought, the part where she explains why this can't happen, why we're too different. Why I'm too young or she's too old, or any of the dozen other reasons why this feeling between us is a mistake. I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time, she said, maybe ever. And it scares me because I don't want to mess it up. What way? She set down the wood plane and looked at her hands. Like I matter to someone. Like someone sees me as more than just a role to fill, or a problem to solve. I wanted to tell her that I'd been seeing her that way since the first day she asked me to look at her car. That she mattered to me in ways I didn't have words for yet, but I was 28 years old, and she was 43. And I didn't know if what I felt was enough to bridge that gap. You do matter, I said instead. To me. She smiled, but it was a complicated smile, happy and sad at the same time. I know, that's what scares me. July turned into August. and our friendship deepened into something that felt inevitable and impossible at the same time. We started taking walks after I finished work, wandering through the neighborhoods around downtown and talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her childhood in New Mexico, growing up in a house full of books and dreams of adventure. I told her about learning carpentry from my grandfather, about the satisfaction of making something beautiful that would last. "Your grandfather sounds like he was a good man," she said one evening as we sat on the bench outside the library. "He was. He taught me that work should mean something. That what you make with your hands should be something you're proud of." "Is that why you became a carpenter?" "Partly, but also because I like the idea that something I build might outlast me. That maybe someday 50 years from now, someone will run their hand along a table I made and think about the person who took the time to get the details right." She was quiet for a long moment. And when I looked at her, she was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "What?" I said. "You're not like other men your age." "How do you mean?" "Most 28-year-old guys I've known were still figuring out who they wanted to be. You already know." I wanted to tell her that I was still figuring plenty of things out, especially when it came to her. But there was something in her voice that made me think she needed to believe I had my life together. So, I just nodded. The night everything changed was a Friday in late August. Lydia had invited me over for dinner, the first time I'd been to her house for something that felt officially like a date. She lived in a small craftsman bungalow on Maple Street with a front porch and flower boxes under the windows. Inside, it was exactly what I'd expected. Books everywhere. Comfortable furniture that looked lived in, art on the walls that meant something to her. "I'm not much of a cook," she said, leading me to the kitchen where something that smelled like garlic and herbs was simmering on the stove. "But I can manage pasta and salad. Smells amazing." We ate by candlelight at her small dining room table, talking about books and travel and the way small towns preserve certain kinds of secrets. She'd opened a bottle of wine, and by the time we finished eating, I felt relaxed in a way I hadn't in weeks. "Elias," she said as we moved to the living room with our wine glasses, "can I ask you something?" "Sure. What do you want?" "I mean, what do you really want out of life?" It was the kind of question that would have made me uncomfortable a few months ago. But with Lydia, I'd gotten used to conversations that went deeper than surface level. "I want to build things that matter," I said. "I want to be good at what I do. I want to find someone who understands that work can be a form of love, that taking care of something or someone is its own kind of art." "And have you found that someone?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. I looked at her sitting on the other end of the couch, wine glass in her hand, hair falling loose around her shoulders, and I knew we'd reached the moment where I had to decide whether to be honest or safe. "I think so," I said. She set down her wine glass and moved closer to me on the couch, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "Elias," she said, and her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "I need you to know that if we do this, if we cross this line, it's going to be complicated. People are going to have opinions about the age difference. They're going to assume things about both of us that might not be true." "What kind of things?" "That you're looking for a mother figure. That I'm having some kind of midlife crisis. That this is about money or status or filling some void that has nothing to do with actually caring about each other." I reached over and took her hand, surprised by how natural it felt. "Do you care what people think?" "I used to. I spent 20 years caring what people thought, making sure I fit into the right boxes and said the right things at the right times. I'm tired of it. So, what do you want to do?" She looked down at our joined hands, then back up at me. "I want to stop being afraid of wanting things." And then she slid closer on the couch. Close enough that I could smell her perfume, something warm and floral that made my chest tight. She looked at me with those dark eyes that have seen more of the world than mine ever will. "Do you want me to move away?" she asked. "And sitting here now looking at this woman who's taught me that love doesn't follow timelines or social expectations. Who's shown me that sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to control them." I know exactly what my answer is. "No," I say, and my voice comes out rougher than I intended. "I want you to stay right here." She smiles then, and it's not the complicated smile I've gotten used to seeing. It's pure happiness, uncomplicated and bright. "Good," she says, and leans forward to kiss me. Her lips are soft and taste like wine, and when she pulls back she rests her forehead against mine. "I was hoping you'd say that." "Lydia," I say, because I need her to understand something. "I don't care about the age difference. I don't care what people say. I care about you, about this, whatever this is, whatever it becomes." She kisses me again, longer this time, and when we break apart she's smiling. I love that you work with your hands, she says, running her fingers along my palm. I love that you think about things lasting, about building something that matters. I love that you see me as someone worth building something with. You are. Even though I'm older. Even though I come with complications and a past and probably more baggage than someone your age should have to deal with. I think about this question seriously because she deserves a serious answer. I think about the 15 years between us and what they mean. She's lived through things I haven't experienced yet, made mistakes I might never make, learned lessons I'm still figuring out. But I also think about the way she listens when I talk about my work. The way she asks questions that make me think more deeply about what I'm doing and why. I think about how comfortable I feel with her. How right it feels to have her in my workshop, in my life. Especially because of those things. I say, you know who you are, Lydia. You know what you want and what you don't want. You've figured out things that most people my age are still guessing about. And that doesn't intimidate you. It should probably intimidate me more than it does, but mostly it just makes me want to be worthy of you. She laughs, but it's a soft laugh, almost like a sigh. Elias Thorne, she says. You have no idea how worthy you are. We spend the rest of the evening on her couch, talking and kissing and figuring out how to fit together. She tells me about her marriage, about feeling invisible for years, about the relief and terror of starting over at 43. I tell her about my fears that I'm not sophisticated enough for her, that she'll get bored with small-town life and small-town dreams. I left Chicago because I was tired of sophistication, she says. I wanted something real, something honest. And you found it in Willow Creek. I found it in you. When I finally leave that night, it's past midnight, and everything between us has changed. We're not just friends anymore. Not just two people who enjoy each other's company. We're something new, something that doesn't have a name yet, but feels solid and real and worth protecting. The next few weeks are like learning a new language. We figure out how to be together in public, how to handle the looks and whispered comments that follow us around town. Lydia was right about people having opinions. The cashier at the grocery store makes pointed comments about age-appropriate relationships. My mother asks me if I'm sure I know what I'm doing. Lydia's neighbor mentions that she's seen a lot of young men coming and going from Lydia's house, which isn't true, but stings anyway. Do you regret it? Lydia asks me one afternoon. We're in my workshop, and she's helping me sand a coffee table while I work on the matching end tables. Getting involved with the town's scandalous older woman. Are you scandalous? Apparently. Baxter from the hardware store told me I should be ashamed of myself for corrupting a nice young man like you. I stop sanding and look at her. She's trying to make a joke of it. But I can see that it bothers her. What did you tell her? I told her that you're perfectly capable of making your own decisions about who you spend time with. Good. But Elias, if this is too much. I put down my sandpaper and walk over to where she's working. She looks up at me, and I can see the uncertainty in her eyes. The fear that maybe the outside pressure will be too much for what we're building. Lydia, I say, taking her hands in mine. I don't care what Mrs. Baxter thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. You make me happy. You make me want to be better at everything I do. If that's scandalous, then I guess I'm scandalous too. She smiles, and I can see some of the tension leave her shoulders. You're sure? I'm sure. That night she stays over for the first time. We make dinner together in my small kitchen. And she teases me about my complete lack of cooking skills while teaching me how to make a proper salad dressing. We watch an old movie on my couch, her head on my shoulder. And I think about how right this feels, how easy. Elias, she says during a quiet moment in the film. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For wanting me to stay. I kiss the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. Thank you for sliding closer on the couch. She laughs and tilts her head up to look at me. Best decision I've made in years. Fall arrives early that year. And with it comes a new rhythm to our relationship. Lydia starts helping me with the business side of my carpentry work. Organizing my invoices and helping me write better descriptions of my services for the website she insists I need. She has a head for organization that I lack. And she seems to enjoy the challenge of making my small business more professional. You're undercharging. She tells me one evening as we go through my records. This dining room set you made last month, you should have charged at least 30% more. People around here don't have a lot of money. People around here don't have a lot of access to custom furniture made by someone who actually knows what they're doing. You're providing something valuable, Elias. You should charge what it's worth. She's right. Of course, I've always been uncomfortable with the business side of carpentry. More interested in the work itself than in making money from it. But Lydia helps me see that undervaluing my work is its own form of disrespect, both to myself and to the craft. With her help, I start taking on bigger projects. Custom pieces for clients in the next town over who are willing to pay for quality. My income increases, but more importantly, I feel more confident about what I'm doing and why it matters. You're different, my friend Matteo tells me one Saturday when we're grabbing beers at Murphy's Tavern. More focused or something? Different how? I don't know. Like you figured something out that the rest of us are still working on. I think about this as I walk home that night. Have I figured something out? Or have I just found someone who helps me see myself more clearly? Lydia is waiting for me on my front porch, reading a book by the light of the porch lamp. She looks up when she sees me coming up the walkway, and her smile makes my chest tight in the best possible way. How was your night out with the boys? She asks. Good. Matteo thinks you've changed me. Have I? I sit down next to her on the porch swing I built last spring. Yeah, I say, but in good ways. What kind of good ways? I think about how to explain it. How she's made me more ambitious. Not in a grasping way, but in a way that honors the work I do. How she's made me more thoughtful about the future, about building something that lasts. How she's made me more confident in my own judgment, less worried about what other people think I should want. You've made me braver, I say finally. Braver how? Braver about wanting things. About believing I deserve good things. She reaches over and takes my hand. You do deserve good things, Elias. You deserve everything good, so do you? I'm starting to believe that. Winter comes early and hard that year. By November, we're getting snow that usually doesn't arrive until January, and the cold drives us indoors more often. Lydia's house becomes our default gathering place, warmer and more comfortable than my small place behind the workshop. She's started cooking more. Experimenting with recipes from a cookbook her mother sent her. I've started reading more, working my way through some of the books she recommends. We've settled into a domestic routine that feels both natural and miraculous to me. Are you happy? She asks me one night as we're cleaning up after dinner. Yeah, I say, and realize I mean it completely. Are you? Happier than I've been in years, maybe ever. Even with all the complications, she considers this seriously, the way she considers most questions. The complications are worth it, she says. What we have is worth it. I think about this a lot over the next few weeks. What do we have exactly? We've never talked about the future in concrete terms. Never made plans beyond the next weekend or the next month. But there's something solid building between us. Something that feels permanent even though we haven't named it that way. The question comes to a head just before Christmas when Lydia gets a phone call that changes everything. I'm in the workshop, putting the finishing touches on a jewelry box I've been making as a Christmas present for her, when she comes in looking shaken. That was my former boss in Chicago. She says they want to offer me a job, head librarian at the main branch. It's a good job, Elias. Better than anything I'll find around here. My stomach drops, but I try to keep my voice steady. That's great, I say. That's what you wanted, right? A chance to get back to library work. I thought it was what I wanted. And now? She sits down in the armchair in the corner, the one she's claimed as her own over the past few months. Now I don't know. I'd have to move back to Chicago, leave Willow Creek. Leave what? Leave you. The words hang in the air between us like a challenge. This is the moment I realize where we have to decide what we're doing, where this relationship is going, whether what we have is strong enough to survive a real test. Do you want the job? I ask. I want the work. I miss being a librarian, miss feeling useful in that way. But I don't want the life that comes with it. I don't want to go back to being the person I was in Chicago. You wouldn't have to be that person. Wouldn't I? Cities have a way of making you into who they need you to be. And Chicago, she shakes her head. Chicago is where I learned to make myself smaller, to want less, to settle for being invisible. I set down my sandpaper and walk over to her. You could never be invisible, Lydia. Not to me. But if I'm in Chicago and you're here, then we'll figure it out. How? Long-distance relationships are hard enough without a 15-year age gap and completely different lives. She's right, of course. The practical difficulties are real and significant. But sitting here looking at her, thinking about the past 6 months and how much better my life has become with her in it, I know I'm not ready to give up without a fight. What if you didn't have to choose? I say. What do you mean? What if there was a way for you to do library work without going back to Chicago? Elias, there aren't any library jobs around here. Willow Creek has a part-time position that pays barely above minimum wage, and that's it for 50 miles in any direction. What about starting your own thing? She looks at me like I've suggested she become an astronaut. My own thing, a consulting business. Help small towns set up better library systems or help people organize their personal collections. Or, I'm thinking out loud now, trying to imagine possibilities. What about teaching online courses about research or information management? I don't know anything about running a business. You've been helping me run mine for months. You're good at it. She's quiet for a long moment, and I can see her thinking through the possibilities. It would be risky, she says finally. No steady paycheck, no benefits, no guarantee it would work. But it would be yours, and you could do it from here. Is that what you want? For me to stay? This is the question I've been avoiding for months. The one that requires me to be completely honest about what I want and what I'm willing to risk for it. Yeah, I say. I want you to stay. I want you to stay and build something with me. Not just a business, but a life. I want to wake up next to you and go to sleep next to you and spend the years in between figuring out how to make each other happy. Elias, I know I'm younger than you. I know I don't have a lot of experience with relationships or life or any of the things you've already figured out, but I love you, Lydia. I love you in a way that makes me want to be better at everything, including loving you. She stares at me for a long moment, and I can't read the expression on her face. You love me. Yeah, I do. Even though I'm complicated and scared and probably going to make mistakes. Especially because of those things. She gets up from the chair and walks over to where I'm standing. She reaches up and cups my face in her hands, looking at me like she's trying to memorize what I look like in this moment. I love you too, she says. I love your hands and your laugh and the way you think about building things that last. I love that you see possibilities where other people see problems. I love that you make me feel brave enough to want things again. So, you'll stay, I'll stay. We'll figure out the business thing together. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure out something else. But I'm not going anywhere, Elias Thorne. She kisses me then, and it tastes like promises and new beginnings, and the kind of happiness that's worth waiting for. Merry Christmas, she says against my lips. Merry Christmas, that was 6 months ago. Lydia turned down the Chicago job and started her consulting business, working with small libraries across 3 states to improve their systems and services. It's been more successful than either of us expected, and she's happier than I've ever seen her. We moved in together in February, choosing her house because it has better bookshelves and a bigger kitchen. I converted her spare bedroom into a home office for her business, building custom shelving and a desk that fits perfectly in the space. People in town have mostly gotten used to us. We still get the occasional comment or disapproving look, but for the most part, we've become just another couple, unremarkable in our happiness. Do you ever regret it? Lydia asks me sometimes. Choosing this life instead of dating someone your own age, someone without so much history. Never, I tell her, and I mean it. You're not too old for me, Lydia. You're exactly the right age to be yourself. Spring has arrived early this year, and Lydia's garden is already showing signs of life. She's planted tomatoes and herbs and flowers whose names I'm still learning. I've started building raised beds for her, custom designed to fit the space and her vision for what it could become. This is going to be beautiful, she says, standing in the backyard with dirt under her fingernails and her hair pulled back in a bandana. It already is, I say. But I'm not looking at the garden. She catches me watching her and smiles. What? Just thinking about how lucky I am. We both are. She's right. We're both lucky, but not in the way people usually mean when they talk about luck. We're lucky because we were brave enough to want something that didn't make sense to anyone else. We're lucky because we chose each other despite all the reasons why it should have been complicated or impossible. Last week, Lydia got a call from a university press interested in publishing a book she's writing about small town libraries and their role in community building. It's the kind of opportunity she never would have had in Chicago. The kind of thing that grows out of following your instincts, instead of following the path everyone else thinks you should take. I want to dedicate it to you, she told me. Why? Because you taught me that building something worthwhile takes time and patience and the willingness to work with the grain instead of against it. That's woodworking. That's everything. Tonight, we're sitting on the couch where this all started, where she slid closer and asked if I wanted her to move away. She's reading a manuscript she's editing for a client, and I'm sketching plans for a bookshelf she wants me to build for her office. Elias, she says, looking up from her work. Yeah, do you ever think about the future? I mean, the long-term future. Sometimes. What do you think about? Growing old with you. Watching you become even better at what you do. Maybe traveling to some of those places I used to dream about, but with you this time. That sounds good to me, even when I'm 60 and you're 45, especially when you're 60 and I'm 45. She sets down her manuscript and moves closer to me on the couch, the same way she did that night 8 months ago when everything changed. Do you want me to move away? She asks, echoing the question that started everything. Never, I say, pulling her closer. I never want you to move away. She settles against my side, her head on my shoulder, and I think about the life we're building together. It's not the life either of us expected, but it's ours. We've made it with our own hands, carefully and patiently, working with the grain of who we really are, instead of trying to force ourselves into shapes that don't fit. Outside, the sun is setting over Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Inside, Lydia is warm against my side, and the future stretches ahead of us like an unfinished piece of wood, full of potential and waiting for us to shape it into something beautiful. I love you, she says quietly. I love you too. And sitting here in the lamplight of our living room, I know that sometimes the best things happen when you're brave enough to slide closer instead of moving away. When you choose love over logic and trust over fear. Sometimes the best things happen when you stop worrying about whether it makes sense to anyone else and start paying attention to whether it makes sense to you. It makes sense to me. All of it. The age difference, the small town gossip, the complicated logistics of building a life with someone whose timeline doesn't match yours. It makes sense because Lydia makes sense to me. Because what we have together is real and solid and worth protecting. Tomorrow I'll go back to my workshop, and she'll go back to her consulting work. And we'll continue building the life we've chosen together. But tonight, we're here on this couch where it all began, and she's not moving away, and neither am I. That's the story of how Lydia Vasquez slid closer to me on her couch and asked if I wanted her to move away, and how I learned that sometimes the best answer is the simplest one. No, stay right here. Stay forever. Stay and help me build something that lasts. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to let the world name your life for you. Elias and Lydia don't win because the town approves, or because their timelines align, they win because they choose to work with the grain of who they are. That's the lesson. Love, and any worthy craft, asks for presence over performance, patience over panic, and the courage to stay when staying is honest. We're taught to optimize for optics, the right age, the right summe, the right storyline. But meaning arrives the way wood reveals its figure under a steady hand, slowly, truthfully, after you stop forcing it into someone else's template. Elias learns to price his work like it matters. Lydia dares to rebuild a vocation on her own terms. Together they discover that respect isn't found in external permission, it's carved from daily choice to listen deeply, to tell the plain truth, to protect what's real from the noise. If you're standing at a threshold right now, between the life others expect and the life that actually fits, let this be your sign. Pick the path that feels like breath, not theater. Choose the stay that aligns with your soul, even if it confuses the crowd. If this story stirred something in you, tell me in the comments. What truth will you honor this week? And what grain will you stop sanding against? I read every reply. And if you want more honest, soul-level stories and lessons like this, subscribe to the channel. Join a community that builds things that last.